Perception is not reality. We can recognize that sometimes our subjective experience of something is objectively false. Our eyes and senses are imperfect mechanisms that can be tricked. The imperfect information our senses take in is distorted further by our brains. We can have an experience affected by our built-in sensitivities, biases, or traumas and remember it in a certain light, but then go back and watch footage of the same experience and realize it didn't even happen in the way we thought it did. We can recognize the distinction between how we thought we experienced it and what actually happened. The right response is to say that our subjective experience does not match objective reality, that it was inherently an incorrect reading of the world around us. What would be insane is to insist that our objectively incorrect experience is still the truth, simply because our faulty senses experienced it in that way. I experienced great results from cognitive therapy. My therapist had me write down my fears and anxieties when I was feeling them, and then come back to them later and realize how irrational they all were. I would write down solutions for my problems and realize my situations were never as dire as I was subjectively experiencing them to be. We trained my brain so that my subjective experience was more properly in line with objective reality. If the walls are actually closing in on us, we don't think of that as a mental issue that needs to be worked through, because that feeling is completely appropriate based on objective reality. If we are in our second tour of Iraq, looking around for snipers is an appropriate response, but we recognize it as a problem to be worked through. If we are constantly stressing about snipers walking through the streets of Logan, Utah, someone with integrity disorder has a feeling that one of their own limbs does not belong to them, and they have an overwhelming desire to amputate it. In this scenario, we do not encourage amputation. In all of these scenarios, the correct and approved approach is to help someone realize that their feelings are not normal and their subjective experience is not in line with reality. We don't disregard the way they are feeling, but we help them cope with their emotions and ideally retrain their brain, so their thought process is properly in line with objective reality. Sometimes when we have serious arguments and disagreements, it is because both parties are subjectively experiencing reality incorrectly. While it is wrong to completely disregard each other's subjective experiences, and communicating and recognizing these subjective differences is important in helping us to understand each other, it is equally wrong to insist that our subjective experience must be respected as objective reality. We cannot live together if we don't even recognize what is real and what is fake. The narcissistic approach of insisting that the entire world cater to my particular sensitivities 24/7 is guaranteed to result in frustration and sadness for everyone, because it is simply not realistic. Every important subject is inherently linked with strong emotions, and strong emotions are linked to our own particular sensitivities. A far more productive approach is to try to consciously recognize my own sensitivities and biases. Since we're often blind to our weaknesses, this requires listening to corrections and feedback from other people. Listening to criticisms of ourselves is an important part of virtuous living. This makes myself stronger, as opposed to insisting that everyone else pander to my weakness. It is harder, but the virtuous path is always the harder path in the short term. The only way our civilization will survive is if we learn to criticize each other in a constructive ways and accept our weaknesses that others point out in us.